Hello all. Very good afternoon or good evening. You can call me Jude, and I'm here to shed some light on how you can utilize your time in your college effectively, prepare relentlessly, and bag that dream job you've always wanted before, even before you graduate out of your college. So I hope you all are keeping safe and are in good health. And I hope you all have your pencils or your notes app ready so you can jot down all the points that I'm about to share with you guys. And before jumping right in, I'd like to take a moment to thank the placement cell from the institution for inviting me today to connect with you wonderful people today. So without any further ado, let's begin, guys. Yeah. So who am I? As I introduced myself already, I'm Jude Savio, and I'm just a guy who's out of college for a year, 4 months, and 17 days at the time of making this presentation, which is today. And more light on about myself. I'm from the 2015 to 19 batch, and I'm from an EC background. And what is the purpose? What is my purpose here today? Why am I here? I'm basically here to enlighten all your lighten all your fears. And by the end of this session, if I was able to do that, then my goal today is accomplished. So let me quickly brief you about the ropes of the session today as to what I'm going to share with you guys. First of all, I'm going to take you through my journey as an example, as to show you what worked for me and what might work for you. So just to give you a clarity, because not everyone's journey or the path we people take is the same. So I just want to use my journey as an example to enlighten you guys. Second, I'll elaborate on all the resources and techniques that I still follow to stay productive and up with the trends, and also the techniques which I used to learn, all the concepts, be it programming concepts or my hardware projects or anything for that matter. So I'll be sharing those things as well. And third, I'll fill you guys in on some inside information on what the tech giants or the tech industries expect from you guys as young graduates who are about to step inside this huge well of opportunities, which is the IT job market. So people say this is COVID stricken times and people are in quarantine and there's not many jobs available out there, but I see it in a different light. There are people who see this situation with a positive outlook. They have taken it up to themselves, to better their future. Actually, they are seeing this as an opportunity. So whatever time we are in, uh, it is up to you to make the best of it. So these are not bad times. These are not good times necessarily, but these are still rewarding times, is what I'm trying to say. And lastly, as you can see, there's a big chunk of text there. I'm going to give you some bonus tips. So hang on till the last of the slides, okay? Yeah, so here is my experience. I've been working as an automation slash RPA developer for quite a while now, a year and a half to be precise. I also hold an internship experience from Zoho during my third year, which prepped me up for a lot of things, lot of new things, uh, um, particularly speaking the corporate world. During my internship at Zoho, I was exposed to a lot of new things like web dev, game dev, Node.js, and frankly speaking, being from the circuit background, electronics and communications background, I wasn't into much of this web dev and everything. So that is the first time I started playing around with web development technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then I moved on to some frameworks and whatnot. And it also, shed some light on me on how the corporate culture works, how people interact, how it is that you do a code review there, how is it that you document your code, because basically anybody can sit on their laptops and type code for two straight days even, and if it is not sensible or clear, or or is it not following any best practices, then it is a huge waste of time for everyone, including the person who typed that long chunk of code. So it did open up quite a lot of new things for me to learn. And I completed my internship at Zoho. Then I moved on to Cartech, where I am working as a RPA developer now, which I've settled in quite well also. So I've been saying RPA quite a lot. So what is RPA? So basically RPA, if you expand it, RPA is nothing but it is a robotic process automation technology stack where you employ software bots to, automate this monotonous tasks which people do on a daily basis. So what do I mean by that? So let's just take an example of a very big retailer company. Let's take Amazon, let's take Flipkart or whatnot. So these guys are very big vendors and retailers, right? They have a huge network of vendors and retailers, right? So these vendors and retailers, they receive invoices. Invoices are nothing but bills on a regular basis, right? So when you think of their scale, they might receive around, who knows, even 100,000 bills per day also. So what do they do is someone sits and reads each invoices one by one and starts entering all those details into their system, where they use it to log all the data of the invoices in their systems. So a person has to sit and do this, whereas through RPA you can create a robot, a software bot using code that does the same task as the human does on a daily basis, but even more efficiently, even more accurately, even more with less time. So that is the goal. You free up a person. So if let's just say for 100,000 bill a day and they're doing it for 1 month and the total workforce is like 45 people, imagine if a single bot can do all these works on a daily basis. You're reducing the cost of almost, you're reducing the salaries of almost 45 employees. And these 45 employees you can use in some other value added tasks within the company. So it frees people from here. It is not necessarily taking people out of their jobs, it is freeing people out of their jobs so that they can concentrate even more on much more value added tasks, if I may say. So that is what I do as an RPA developer. And since it is a relatively new field, right, I've particularly liked this field as there is a widespread occasions where I'm able to use machine learning models and make the RPA perform even better. So a small example for where I use machine learning is under these invoices as well. So the human eye is susceptible to changes. What I mean by that is one invoice is going to be different from another. We as people know, our brains are function to, uh, assess that information. We can make sense out of things, but when you want to teach a computer that, it is going to get difficult. So that is where machine learning kicks in. So I create machine learning models there to identify these invoices based on their templates. I mean, based on their color, based on their table rows, based on their templates, whatnot, whatever features the customer needs. So we develop our own models also to develop to identify these invoices and extract the data using OCR. OCR is another uh, it's like RPA spouse, you can say. OCR is called optical character recognition, and that is a technology we use to extract text from images. So we use OCR and many other text stacks. So the things that I specialize in basically are process discovery, which is where we can fit in RPA in an organization. I mean, what are all the tasks that you guys are doing on a daily basis that I can replace with the bot? Basically, that is process discovery. And my favorite, which is AIML, pipeline design and R&D, which is research and development. So AIML pipeline is nothing but an end-to-end this AIML model creation and deploying. Okay. So system landscape analysis is nothing but you can deliver RPA as a single program which sits as an executable file on a computer or a comprehensive application. So this application might run on a cloud architecture or an on-prem architecture, or it can be a hybrid architecture as well. So that kind of a system landscape analysis based on the customer's requirement I do. And last but not the least, I get into the dirty details, which is the process automation and the design thinking. Design thinking is basically, talking with all the people that is involved in the process that we have selected for automating using RPA, and coming up with a flow of the process, to ensure 100% accuracy, 100% success rate at any given time. So that is what process automation and design thinking means. So the kind of technology we use to achieve this is Python for automation, AI and machine learning, obviously using Python. And for other scripting purposes as well, we sometimes have to web scrape various databases or websites also. So we use Python there as well, and other third-party tools, licensed tools like UiPath and Automation Anywhere also. So as an RPA developer, I am required to have a knowledge on these tools and complete certifications to be relevant on the market, because Python can't be the only solution that you can give to a customer. The customer might have something specific in mind, and when you propose only one solution, he loses his interest in you. So you have to diversify your knowledge there. So I have some knowledge on these third-party tools as well. So moving on, these are my socials, guys. I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn after you are done with this session. I also have a GitHub account and Instagram and Dev. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this, but Dev is a developers social community. LinkedIn is more formal. You have to you just post updates and do whatever. But Dev, you can share your thoughts, share your learnings. You can be jovial about it also. People appreciate you for what you do. So it is a good place to hang out there. So yeah, but a word of caution, I'm most active on LinkedIn, so you have a better chance of me catching me there. And also on a later slide, I talk about how many students and people fail to realize and utilize the power of LinkedIn. So if you don't already have an account created on LinkedIn, you should create one once you're done with this session. Moving on. So we are starting the session now. So let us see what are all the top 8 tech jobs in 2020. So you can refer these jobs at Automation Anywhere's LinkedIn post the previous month. So let's jump right in. Okay, so these are the top 8 jobs which Automation Anywhere has found to be the hottest jobs in the market right now. The first is the AI architect who, develops the models and takes care of the scrutiny process, the data handling and everything. The DevOps engineer is basically, he deploys all those models on cloud. He handles all the CI/CD operations. He handles all the deployment operations and everything. The data analyst is someone who simply put, a data analyst tries to gather insights from bland data, unstructured data, that is data that makes no sense at all. So, but there's usually a gold mine hidden within an Excel sheet, which a company doesn't utilize. So a data analyst's presence or help there can make a huge difference there. So data analyst roles is indeed a very good job currently moving on the market right now. And I come in over at the bot developer side, or I can also be known as an automation engineer. So we are people who create software bots to move people from very tedious and monotonous tasks to high value added tasks. So that is what we do. Software engineer, I think you guys must have a fair sense of idea what they do. So software engineer is basically, they have to be agnostic. You will definitely hear these words a lot in your coming days or in your career days. Agnostic basically means they don't stick to one tech stack. They are not just a Python developer. They're not just a Java developer. They learn and do things as the time needs them to do, as the situation demands them to do. So that is what the beauty of being a software engineer is, and everyone has to be like that. Everyone has to be tech agnostic. So that is what a software engineer does. He basically creates web apps, anything for that matter, any software products for that matter. And the cloud architect designs all the cloud infrastructure of a company. He also has to take care of all the loggings and everything. So cloud architect is another hot job on the market. And next comes the information and security analyst. Basically, he's the one who's keeping all the company stuff within the company and not outside the company. And he's the guy who's not allowing any hackers to get inside the company's firmware. So he's basically, information security consultant, and they can be also comprised of ethical hackers at times. And finally comes UX designers. So the look and feel of a product. Um, the product, I mean, in the sense is, you can take, for instance, you can take Google, or you can take LinkedIn. So the ease of use, how easy it is to use, how good it feels to use, and whatnot. How is it fluid? Is the animations good? Is it snappy? Is it responsive? Everything comes under UX designers. So since we've reviewed all these jobs in the market, many of them sound pretty complex, and some would even have thought that it was quite difficult. It would be a quite difficult nut to crack. But don't worry, I feel you guys. I was a student in your shoes as well once. So moving on, you are silently asking yourself, which career path should I choose, or what kind of programming languages should I learn, to should I study to get into one of these jobs. And as you're all aware, without my saying here, there's a ton of languages available there, and it is very hard to, initially to sift through all these and select one particular language and go with it. So I am here to clear all these things for you guys here. So for the answer, let's turn back in time a little bit. So in particular, let's go back to my past, my first year in college. So what is the answer to all these questions? If you ask me, when I was in my first year, I definitely would have been the same guy who's giving this expression right here. I didn't know anything. The first year of my college, I was clueless. I was literally clueless. I did not know what to do. I didn't have a goal. I just went in with the flow. I simply studied my subjects and went on with my life. Only good thing happened during my first year was I had very good seniors in my bus. So what we used to do was, we used to plan to go somewhere once we finish college during the evenings to have some snacks, or to have some fun. But meanwhile, while we are commuting to our homes, we used to have very good discussions, long timeless discussions about coding actually. So they would discuss about the problem which they solved today on maybe HackerRank or SkillRank or LeetCode or anything. Even though I didn't know what they were talking about, it was fun to listen to their thought process actually on how they applied to solve those problems. So basically, anything that is easy to understand intrigues us. So basically, that was how I was pulled in actually. So they were basically in the third and the second year, so they were preparing for their placements, and that is how I got introduced into the world of coding. So we used to chat about this coding and technical interviews and tips and tricks and everything, and on our way back home. So that's how it all began. So moving on, in my second year, since I was from an ECE background, I wanted to do something. I wanted to start doing something. So I took up an interest in hardware and others of all sorts. Okay. I saw it as a kind of advantage being an ECE because you can pivot to both ways when you're from an ECE background. Both ways, as in you can either do software projects or you can do hardware projects. Doesn't matter. But these kind of talks only happen once you're in college. Once you're out there in the market, once you're a professional with an undergraduate, and if you're searching for a job, people wouldn't pay much attention to the kind of discipline you are following. The discipline, as in whether you're an ECE student or you're a CSE student or you're a triple E student, it doesn't matter. They only look after your skills and how you carry yourself. So yeah, so I joined the hardware club at my college at first, and I finished two mini electronic projects, which were pretty basic projects, to be honest, just for the knowledge sake and knowledge gathering sake. So I just wanted to know the dirty little details of the things. So I just joined the club, and I did a quick two little projects there. And there was this other club, a programming club, which taught syntaxes and programmatical thinking using C and C++. So basically what they thought was the syntax of each and every languages and some advanced concepts like classes, structures, and how you implement your own data structures and everything. So I got a gist of the languages there, and I also participated on outside competitions such as project displays and paper presentations based on the hardware modules I developed when I was in the club. So I had, by the end of the second year, I knew the ropes of two programming languages and had two competition wins under my belt. So we had this policy among ourselves that we should complete at least one mini project, either hardware or software, among us friends each semester. So that's why the ironic number. The second year involved a lot of twos for me, two clubs, two projects, two programming languages, and two competition wins. So that is where I stood at the end of my second year. Moving on, by the end of the second year, I started preparing for my programming interviews. Basically, I started preparing for the technical interviews, and the third year was a big break for me actually. I signed up for an account on HackerRank. That is when I started practicing on HackerRank and started grinding each day. And I used to, every preset day I had a pre-planned topic to practice on. One day I'd either do trees, one day I'd either do problem solving, or one day I'd either do data structures or anything that I've pre-planned in my college. So I make time to plan what I would do the evening. So I didn't pay much attention to the subjects, honestly speaking, which I shouldn't have done. But this took me by storm actually. So I was overwhelmed by the interest I actually showed to this particular thing, and many of my seniors got placed in very good companies like Zoho and Amazon. So I also wanted to follow them in the same footsteps, and they were kind enough to take me under their wing actually. So for the most part, I stuck with HackerRank and Geeks for Geeks. Geeks for Geeks has a plethora of guides, materials, and practice sessions, and everything computer science, man. So any student preparing for interviews would have come across this platform at least once in their life. So basically, it is a computer science degree in the web. So yeah, you definitely have to visit Geeks for Geeks every day, and it is going to save your skin at many times. three friends and I engaged ourselves in building a machine learning based smart mirror project, which was a gold mine for us basically. It was a huge success and it added more flair to my resume, which I needed the most. So when you have to speak during the interview, you have to make yourself interesting, right? So you have to do something interesting. So that is what we planned to do, and that is what we did. So it gave us an added boost to us during the interviews which we attended. So people would look upon our project, and they would ask more and more, so we could save our times on that also. And it was during this year I pivoted to software. As you can generally see, I started practicing for my technical interviews and picked up Java at our bootcamp training. So I picked a language. So the question we saw earlier, which programming language I picked. So when it comes to technical interviews, it doesn't necessarily have to be some languages that are involved in this web dev frameworks or anything. You just have to pick up one of the high level languages like C, C++, Java, or Python. So I stuck with Java because the classes are much well defined, and it is a better language when you compare to C++, both on a syntactical level and at a machine level. So I picked up Java in my bootcamp. And by the end of the third year, I had bagged 3+ offers and 2+ solid projects, one of which is even patented now. 3+ offers come from, one is from Cartech, and one is from Zoho, and one is from CodeVita, which I participated in TCS on myself actually. So I had 3+ job offers at the end of my third year. So moving on, for the fourth year, I wanted to mellow down a bit. I wanted to focus more on improving my GPA. So I had my eyes on my GPA for a while because I couldn't concentrate more on my studies when comparing to my interview prep. So I had to improve my GPA a bit also, and fourth year is a good year to do it. Trust me, because of the less subjects and less. There's more theory and less equations, so it is better that way. And I also wanted to help my friends get their dream jobs as well. So I mellowed down a bit and I went on to become my department's president, and I hosted various events like symposiums, paper presentations, international conferences, and whatnot. And I become the placement trainer for our department. So we friends, 4 or 5 people, we used to gather around each day, and we used to take batches under ourselves. So we used to train those guys, be it product based or service based. So we used to do that, and we had 2+ open funded project. Our final year project was a military based use case, so it got funded. And the other is the previous project we had, the patented one. And we published our project as a journal, so it is you can find it on IEEE as well. And I had mentored 3+ patented projects. So for it was kind of like both for the students and for the department under my HOD. So I had to be a mentor for there as well. So this is how my college life turned out to be actually, comparing to my first year. And during work as well, if you see, I have a total experience of 1.5 years, and I've been on on-site trips as well. I've been on 1+ trips on on-sites, and I do process discovery. I even handle our customer relations. So basically, RPA is like the full package. Okay, you just don't do development when it comes to RPA. When you're an RPA developer or an RPA consultant, you just don't do development. You talk with the clients, you understand their pain points, you suggest things, you even have to go through their own landscapes to identify processes that are suitable for RPA. And I've mentored almost 2+ intern batches and whatnot. And I've even I've delivered countless POCs, and still the journey is going, but so far it has been a very rewarding and a magical journey in my perspective. And if you ask me how I accomplished all this, I would say the answer is magic. I'm just kidding, you guys. So if you see, I'll move on to explain about what are all the basic resources that help me get to where I am here now. So this book, man, this book, I'm telling you, this book will help you a lot when you're starting to practice your coding interviews. This is called Cracking the Coding Interview by Gail McDowell. So you can find this book on Amazon. You can either buy this book as a hardcover. I own a copy myself. Still now it is right beside me right now, and you can either buy it on Amazon, or there's a lot of free PDFs there as well. So feel free to download them. So let me also tell you how you should use this book, because most people don't utilize this book to their fullest extent. So this book covers basically everything, right? From how you approach an interview, how you ask people for a referral, how you start applying for interviews, how you should talk in an interview, and comes the technical part, which is a full dedicated section. 75% of the book is only technical. The rest 25% deals with your soft skills. So what I would suggest is start with your soft skills, get a learning, just do a overall reading to know how you should behave or how you should approach to get an interview, or when you're in an interview or whatnot. And in the technical side of things, this has split up all the necessary topics. It'll be split into arrays and strings, linked list, stacks and queues, trees, graphs. So it will have a basic refresher in the sense it will brief you up on what is trees, what are all the types of traversals you can do on trees, and what are all the operations, what are all the time costs and everything. And it will give you problems to solve, which are basically practice problems. So what you have to do is you have to basically learn how do you implement a tree, and you should try solving these problems. Should be miniature variations on just populating a node or anything. So you have to try and solve these problems, and if you get stuck somewhere there since, and if you still can't solve that problems, you can move on to the solutions page where all the solutions are coded in Java. So now you know why I shifted to Java as well. So this ended up being an advantage yet again for me. So since the solutions were in Java, I did not need to have spend time searching the internet to see a different solution in a different language. So this was an added bonus for me. So what you have to do is you have to finish all the practice problems in these books, and you do not have to stop there. Many people stop there thinking they are okay, they are ready for the interview prep and whatnot. So this is just like a brief introduction. So this is what you have to know what you'll be facing in an interview, but the exact contents of this book will not be appearing on any interview, I promise you. So this just has to be a refresher for you guys. Okay, so this will also play a key role in an interview. So trust me, you do have to have a copy of this book with you. Okay. Yeah. So moving on, the next resource which helped me out a lot later is my seniors, which are the ones I said earlier. So have a good rapport with people around you, basically, not just your seniors, with your friends. So you guys are in college right now. You have a very good institution that prepares you, gives you very good opportunities to get placed and whatnot. But in the future, when you want to shift jobs or shift career paths or whatever, you have to know people in the industry to help you towards that translation. So you have to know people. So be in good terms with everyone. Have good friend circles. people who are like-minded like you guys, people who have fun responsibly and still, still have the right setup on their goals. So you have to pair yourself in groups like that so that in the future they'll help you. In my case, my seniors referred me a lot, and they opened up many windows of opportunities for me in terms of interviews. So uh, they really help. And this is where also LinkedIn plays a subtle role here, which I'll definitely cover. So you have to have a good relationship with everyone right from your college. So people know you, people tend to talk about you. So you might not know when you know, word of mouth will be useful. So you have to be in a good relationship with everyone. So moving on, the most important part, yes, all the social media platforms here. Uh, I'll begin with LinkedIn basically. So most people don't realize the value of LinkedIn here because LinkedIn is a very good tool. Okay, I'll tell you why. LinkedIn not only helps you in finding, the right like-minded people, you know, it will help you find like-minded people. It will help you keep updated with your tasks and everything, and it will help you in your job searching as well. You can be visible in LinkedIn. You can show your activities, your achievements, your progress, your wins, and everything on LinkedIn, so that you are active on the job. That just shows that you're active in the job market, and you're willing to put in effort to show that you're available, you're self-initiating and whatnot. So you definitely have to be active on LinkedIn. So when your recruiters do a background check on you, if they see that you're active on LinkedIn, that shows your self-worth there actually. So you have to have a very good LinkedIn profile when it comes to job searching basically. Right from college, people have very very good profiles. So you can have one good profile for a reference, and you can start building yours as well. And moving on to all these other platforms, I spoke about Dev, I spoke about HackerRank, and I spoke about Geeks or Geeks as well. So moving on, what I would like to suggest here is that you have to start spending money for learning. Okay, not by a lot, but let's just say you suddenly got interested in web development. You wanted to learn a full stack. Okay, you wanted to learn particularly the main stack. So a quick way of doing this is just logging on into Udemy, which is this one, buying a course there, which only comes around to $360 or anything, but definitely worth it for every single penny you pay. You get a profound knowledge on the topic. So they make you self-able. Okay, so once you are done with that course, you can start building your own projects there, which add up to your mini projects. Okay, so you can make use of Udemy like that. There's a lot of very good free courses on Coursera. One of the best being Introduction to Machine Learning by Andrew Ng on Coursera from Stanford University. It is free actually. It is free for students actually. So you can apply for this thing called financial aid there. So the course is basically free for you guys. And if you're really interested, you want to do a small side degree on cybersecurity, and you're willing to pay for it, you can go log on to Udacity, which is right here, and you can start your course there also. So other than that, a common as a developer, the profiles you should have are GitHub profile, which is this black cat here, and a Medium profile, a Reddit profile, a LeetCode profile, and a dev profile. So this basically sums up a dev's life here. And Twitter, you can use it for social media as well as for learning as well as for updates. Okay. Twitter is even becoming a bigger threat to LinkedIn in terms of updates and news. So Twitter is a good place to hang out. YouTube will be your friend all these 4 years to learn things and learn concepts, and mainly Discord. So I wanted to touch upon this because when you buy a course on Udemy, okay, when you buy a course on Udemy, you get to join groups that are on Discord. So these guys are just students like you across India, across the world. So they came there to learn. So you can find programming buddies there. You can showcase your work there. There's this particular course from this creator called Andrew Nyogi. Okay, he does this series called Zero to Mastery. He does this on all fronts. He does this zero to mastery for machine learning. He does a zero to mastery for web development. He does a zero to mastery for even interview preparation, even for fan companies as in Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, and Netflix. So you should definitely check these guys out. And they have a very strong Discord community. So it is better if you join there. Other than that, you can log on to Medium, which is this M symbol right here. You can log on to Reddit. These are only optional. And this particular K on the top left, which is the first icon, is called Kaggle, and it is a data scientist playground. So basically, you use HackerRank to practice your DS and Algo, right? So you use Kaggle to practice your data science and machine learning algorithms there. So whatever you learned, you can practice on Kaggle there. They have a lot of data sets there. Only prerequisite being you would have to know either Python or R. So I suggest Python because it is easy to get started with. So you can even start doing your machine learning. You can projects there, practice your machine learning skills there, and you can also participate in competitions there, which are paid a good amount actually. So it has to be constructive. Okay, nothing ever happens on the first step itself. So to be constructive, but you can definitely see your learning curve being exponential. So that is what we really want here. Uh, our focus should be more or less on the rewards than on the things which we will be able to achieve with what we are learning here. So that is what you have to focus on basically. So I hope I've covered everything on the platform, because this will be a game changer when it comes to finding jobs or applying jobs or practicing for your jobs. Okay. Yes. So since we've covered all these techniques and all these resources, let's move on to, you know, you all know, like you all now know that what you have to learn, what you have to study and everything to get an awesome job. But what's the point if you don't learn how to learn the right way, right? So if you don't know how to manage your time efficiently, if you're not using your time properly, if you're not using your thought process properly, then all those efforts go for naught. So I've used these three techniques right from my college. So the first one is called the Pomodoro technique. So basically, it is splitting up your time into 4 equal intervals. Okay, so you can choose the duration for these intervals. You can either set it to 20 or 25 intervals based on your appetite. So if you set it for a 25-minute interval, you can take a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break. So once you complete a 4 cycle thing, like 4 intervals of 25 minutes with the breaks, you get to go on a large cycle of breaks. So it can be 1 hour or 2 hour. So why do I say this is during this time, right? During this 25-minute interval, right? Before your break comes, you shouldn't have to get distracted. Okay. That is the main point of doing this. You should not turn your head if you get a notification on your cell phone, or if you're getting distracted by some other thing. So if you do get distracted, you should have the self-discipline to restart it again. So that is how the rule works. If you get distracted, you start the cycle again. So you can't complete a full cycle there. And at the end of the cycle, you can reward yourself, what gives you happiness. Okay, you can either listen to music, or you can buy a chocolate, you can have your burger or anything. So whatever you want to do. The second thing is called Parkinson's law. So basically, the definition of the law is as follows. Okay, work expands as to fill the time available for its completion. Basically, what it means is the amount of time you allocate to finish a work is what it will take regardless of the amount of work present. So let me put it to you in more simpler terms. Let's just say you want to write a letter to your cousin. Okay. You can write that letter in 1 hour. You can also write that letter in 1 day. The time is going to be different here, but the work is going to be same, and the work is going to expand according to the time. So if you have the liberty of finishing the letter in a day, you're going to take intervals of the day and finish it one by one, or do it at a single stretch. So you utilize that entire stretch of time. That is what this law means. So basically, where you use it is, this is more of a self-discipline oriented kind of thing, moral kind of thing. So you identify the gaps in your day, basically using this technique. You know where you're lacking, where you're wasting time, where you're not doing productive tasks. So you can use Parkinson's law there, set a time frame, and you can integrate Pomodoro inside, so that you know that you're using your time right. And last but not the least is the most famous learning technique of all time. Of all, it is proven. It is called the Feynman technique. So basically, when you want to learn a new thing and you want to solidify that concept inside your memory for a long period of time, you practice the Feynman technique. Let's just say you have a topic you want to learn. Okay. So what you do is you first identify the topic, identify what you want to learn. So let's just say they took some chapters in your college today, and you want to learn it thoroughly. So you identify the chapter, first step, then you learn it and try to teach it to yourself. Okay, when you teach it to yourself, you will notice that you can't remember every single thing you learned. So you identify gaps there, your memory gaps. So what you have to do is you have to take a note of these gaps and relearn the whole thing and simplify it so that you can even explain it to a 5-year-old, just with a context, not with a full background. Okay, you just say this such that a 5-year-old understands. That is how simple you have to keep it in memory and reteach it to yourself. All these things sounds very tedious. I know, even I felt the same, but uh, the fruits of your labor is in really trying these things out. Okay, really trying three things out in unison actually. So that is when you reap the benefits of these three things. So I suggest to do a bit of background research here as well. Okay. Yes. So moving on. We have come on to the penultimate section actually. So this is what the tech industry's expectations are. Okay. So what recruiters mainly see, or what even I've seen, what I expected from the interns that I mentored, is basically when we sift through your resumes. Okay, we look at three main things. One is your technical skills, your initiative, and soft skills. Technical skills can be demonstrated through your internships, through your mini projects, and through various other platforms as well, through online competitions as well. Okay, so we just assess, how far this person has come comparing to this guy. What are all the stack he knows right out of college and whatnot. And his initiative is a really main thing. Okay, this just shows that you're utilizing your time right in your college. Okay, you have not wasted any time. You have done productive things throughout your college, meaningful things throughout your college. So that's what initiative shows. And finally, soft skills. which is very, very important. You can be the biggest, baddest, greatest coder in your college, but still fail to explain your thought process, or basically speak your mind out in an interview. So people see that as a very big no. Okay, so you have to have very good soft skills. Just practice speaking in front of a mirror. That is quite enough to improve your soft skills, basically. So moving on to this table of pictures here, the first thing, as an added bonus in a resume, we see certifications. Okay, if you completed any certifications in terms of Java, it can be OCJP, the Oracle Certified Programmer, or even in terms of RPA, you can do free certifications from Automation Anywhere University. And the kind of competitions you participate, and the magnitude and the value of the competitions you participate. Okay, it can be either open source competitions like Hacktoberfest that occurs every year on October, or it can be the Smart India Hackathon, which I've also participated and progressed a few levels. And I've also uh, very in the very recent past, I've mentored teams. Also, I've gone on as a judge, so I've come full circle there also. So the kind of competitions you do matters, and winning those competitions will give you a boost in your resume. And mini projects. So basically, what I've told you so far, take the time, take the effort, put the effort to create small mini projects that are actually representative of real world problems. Okay, you can't just do something like, you can't do a photo gallery and say I've made a photo collage on the web. So you can't do that. You have to try to address some similar real world problem, but it doesn't necessarily have to be very complex. It just has to be a prototype of the problem. Okay, and if there's value, you can even proceed on it and become an entrepreneur, man. It is basically up to you. And internships will be like ISO certified student on your resume. Okay, so when we see if you've gone to an internship or anything, it shows that you know how to operate in a, you know in a place of work, basically in a corporate landscape. And we know you've been involved in projects and mini projects and whatnot. So it basically qualifies you as a professional there. So internships are important. Try to go on as many internships as possible. Try to gather as many certificates as possible. Okay, try to validate yourself when you're in college. I'm not saying you should forgo all your enjoyments and do this. You can do both these simultaneously. This is what I'm trying to say. So that is what tech industry's expectations are as of 2020. And moving on to the final bonus parts. Okay, people don't stress up on these, but I just wanted to share this with you guys as well. So basically, many people work so hard, okay, that they forget to take care of themselves. Okay, all these things, when done right, will give you a positive outlook towards life. Okay, and help you generate endorphins, which in turn will keep you motivated. Okay, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the results. Okay, even if you have a bad result in an interview, you'll still stay positive, which is what matters. Okay, your outlook of life matters the most. I eat healthy, sleep on time, at least try to clock at least 8 hours, enjoy what you're doing, and have a positive outlook. And definitely in these times, at least for the next year, until we resume our the normal worldly, the trips to college and everything. So we are not able to achieve that now. So try to stay positive, try to have a positive outlook in life. Okay, all these things which I've said to you, I truly wish someone would have told me when I started out in my college. But I'm really happy today that I got to share all these experiences and learning with you guys. And remember, your health and your body are your biggest assets. Okay. Take care of yourselves and always look over the horizon. Your destiny of greatness awaits you guys. Okay. All the very best. And if you feel like I haven't addressed your questions, your particular doubts or your particular questions or your concerns, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I hope you guys had a wonderful session. And I wish you a good day. Thank you guys. Bye.